When he shot Batista, Leon Prater probably cemented himself as one of the most hated Dexter villains of the entire series. Sure, every angel gets its wings, but Batista was beloved in the Dexter franchise, and he went out in one of the worst ways. Today, we are breaking down everything that could have happened if Leon Prater had never killed Angel Batista. But first, let's address how he ended up bleeding out on the cold floor of a billionaire madman's vault in the first place. Batista's road to Leon Prater's mansion really began the moment he discovered that his old pal Dexter didn't really die in Hurricane Laura. He was actually living under the assumed identity of Jim Lindsay in Iron Lake, New York for some reason. Once he was hit with that bombshell, Angel's instincts snapped back into place. Too many things just weren't adding up. If Dexter had faked his death and gone into hiding, even going so far as to abandon his own son, what else could he have been lying about? And what else had he been trying to hide? Was Maria right about Dexter all along? Angel traveled to Iron Lake to confront him directly and began aggressively revisiting the old theory that Dexter had been the butcher. But before Angel could get any real information from him, Dexter escaped Iron Lake's hospital after finally waking up from the 10-week-long coma caused by Harrison's nearly deadly shot to his chest. Once he was out, Dexter immediately headed to New York City to find Harrison, which left Angel with yet another trail to follow instead of closure or even any clues. But Batista was determined at that point, and he wasn't going to let Dexter get away again. Angel retired from Miami Metro on his own terms and followed Dexter to New York unofficially. First, he found Harrison and eventually Dexter himself. He even placed AirPods in Dexter's car to track him without him knowing, all in hopes of catching Dexter in the act of killing to finally prove he had been the Bay Harbor Butcher. At first, he got mild support from NYPD detectives Claudette Wallace and her partner Detective Oliva, who were swayed by his determination and position at Miami Metro, not knowing yet that he had actually already retired. But their belief in him quickly faded to doubt and skepticism when Batista wasn't able to show anything concrete and started to seem a bit too overzealous. When they learned that he wasn't actually with Miami Metro anymore, Wallace and Oliva tried to convince Angel to go home to Miami, told him to stop impersonating an active duty officer, and even threatened to have him arrested if he did not leave New York. But Angel ignored them because, to him, what he was doing had been more important than proper protocols and arbitrary jurisdictions. He needed to get justice for his friends and finally take Dexter down. After catching pictures of Leon Prater and Dexter together, Batista decided to go to Prater's mansion on his own. He figured that Dexter had been getting dangerously close to Prater, but he didn't know why. When he finally met with Leon, Angel tried to warn him that Dexter had been a fraud, a killer, and that he was probably in grave danger himself just by being in close proximity to him. But things turned ugly fast when Prater kidnapped Batista, tied him up inside his vault, and tried to force Dexter to kill him in some twisted demonstration meant to prove Dexter had been fully dedicated to Prater. But of course, Dexter refused to bow to Prater. Instead, he freed Angel from his bindings, thinking they could take Leon down together. But Batista attacked Dexter, driven by years of rage and the need to finally put an end to the lies, murders, and lack of accountability. And before he could do any real damage to Dexter, Prater shot Batista multiple times in the back and fled the vault, locking Dexter inside with his dying friend. With his last breath, Angel cursed Dexter's name, and that was that. But what if Leon hadn't killed Batista in the vault that day? Because of Batista's determination to catch Dexter, there was no doubt he would have gone to Leon's looking to save him from Dexter and get more information. And because of his secrecy and need for control, Leon definitely would have abducted Batista and used him as a pawn to bend Dexter to his will. So Angel most certainly would have ended up in the vault, but what if Leon never got the chance to shoot him? Scenario 1, Batista kills Dexter. In this scenario, Charlie escorts Leon out of the vault after Dexter frees Batista, but before Leon has the chance to shoot him. That would leave Batista on top of Dexter, choking him with the intent to kill. I'm not sure if he was able to overpower Dexter because he is actually stronger than him, or if he was fueled by adrenaline. Could be both. Either way, even Dexter thought he was going to die in that moment at the hands of who he called his old friend. And Dexter's will to survive is strong. There is no doubt he was fighting for his life as Batista was strangling him, but he couldn't get out of his grip. Because of that, we know that without Leon killing Batista, there is a good chance that he would have ended up killing Dexter then and there. And if he had, said, there are a few different ways things could have gone. Remember that Batista had a working phone with him in the vault, and the cell service was great. That's how Dexter called Harrison to the mansion to help him escape. For Dexter, the only way out of the vault without being sent to prison was with Harrison's help. If the police or pretty much anyone else came to rescue him, they would have too many questions and probably figure out that he was a serial killer sooner or later. But unlike Dexter, Batista wouldn't have to wait for one particular person to come and save him. He'd be eager to call the police and finally be proven right about everything. How could anyone possibly believe that Dexter wasn't a serial killer after catching him dead in Prater's vault dedicated to serial killers? Leon would undoubtedly try to stop police from searching his compound, especially without a warrant, but Angel could use the video call and location features on his phone to verify everything he was saying, including almost exactly where he was. He could also show them on video Dexter's dead body and every other creepy thing in the vault with him. With that level of probable cause, the police wouldn't have to wait for a warrant to look for him. Eventually, they'd find Prater's wine cellar and then his poorly hidden button that showed the vault. Getting the code may be a bit of a problem, but with enough time, they would get that too, and they wouldn't wait for Batista to die to get it. Leon could stonewall them as long as he wanted, but at some point, the authorities would get into that vault, and that is when the real problems start for Batista. Once the police were in the vault, they would of course search it from top to bottom, like any other crime scene, maybe even more thoroughly. But what's most important is that they would find the files Prater had been keeping on his serial killer collection over the years. Of course, this would help them solve a number of cases, but for Batista, it would mean they'd find the file on Ronald Red Schmidt. By this point, it would no doubt be filled with pictures of Dexter either attending the gatherings or just traveling the city. Whatever pictures they found of him would prove that he was a serial killer, either the Dark Passenger or, as Batista believed, the Bay Harbor Butcher. Seeing that all of Leon's other serial killer attendees were dead and Dexter was in a coma when Ronald started his killing spree, it wouldn't be hard to prove that Dexter couldn't be the Dark Passenger and instead fit the MO of the Butcher. For a detective as skilled as Claudette, the pieces would come together all too easily. Just like she broke down every aspect of Harrison's involvement in Ryan Foster's death, from motive to the murder weapon, she would be able to do the same in Dexter's case. And with Dexter dead, he wouldn't be around to manipulate his arrest or any other aspect of the investigation. Batista would be vindicated. Deb, Maria, and every other innocent victim of Dexter's would get justice. And James Dokes' name would finally be cleared. As for Leon, even with all of his hidden law enforcement lackeys, there is not enough evidence tampering in the world that would erase the existence of his serial killer trophy vault. No matter how powerful his team of attorneys were, he would have a lot of answering to do. And given that Batista was still alive, he could report Leon and Charlie for kidnapping him, the same Charlie they would have found incriminating files on in the vault with all the rest. With all of that piling up against him, Leon would have no choice but to cooperate with police and try to negotiate some sort of a cushy deal or go on the run. Charlie would also have to go on the run or accept a hefty prison sentence because of what they found in her file. Charlie would probably want to part ways with Leon, but she wouldn't be able to. Going on the run with her mom, as sick as she is, probably isn't something she would be able to pull off on her own. She would need Leon's money, connections, and resources more than ever at that point. And he would need her skills and protection more than ever too. If at all possible, the two would probably continue their relationship begrudgingly, and who knows if they'd ever be caught or face any adequate consequences. Either way, Leon's squeaky clean public image as a generous philanthropist would be permanently shattered. The serial killers whose names and personal details he had would no doubt have to stop killing and maybe even flee themselves. Many would be caught. Some might turn themselves in, others may even kill themselves to evade justice. What's most important is that many of their would-be victims would never be killed. Killing Dexter and exposing those files to the authorities means that hundreds, maybe even thousands of lives would be saved. With results like that, the police and courts may be willing to overlook the fact that Angel had been impersonating a police officer and meddling in their official investigations. Any lawyer worth their salt would be able to show that Angel killed Dexter in self-defense, especially in a world where it's determined Dexter killed Logan in self-defense. So Angel wouldn't have to worry about going to jail for that either. Batista might have killed Dexter and gotten caught caught up in a long-standing legal battle and criminal investigation. But in due time, he would be able to return to Miami a hero, knowing that he cleared his partner's name and helped save countless lives. But there are other possibilities as well. For instance, what if he didn't kill Dexter, but brought him to justice the old-fashioned way? Scenario 2, Batista spares Dexter and turns him in instead. In this scenario, Batista may be willing to spare Dexter's life, despite the intense hatred he developed for him since Angela Bishop called him all those months ago. If Leon hadn't shot Batista before getting out of the vault with Charlie, Batista may have made the choice not to choke Dexter to death. It would take incredible restraint, but perhaps Batista could have pulled back from finishing Dexter off, choosing instead to maybe just choke him until he was unconscious. With Dexter incapacitated, Angel could get him restrained using something in the vault, like the sheet Dexter would end up covering Angel's body with in the real timeline after he was shot to death. Batista could use strips of that to bind Dexter's hands and feet, so even if he woke up, there wouldn't be any chance of fucking around. With Dexter knocked out and tied up, Angel could still call the cops using the cell phone he had tucked away. Again, Leon might try to stop the police from entering and searching his mansion without a warrant, but it wouldn't work because of what Angel would show them via video chat. Then it would only be a matter of time before the cops located the vault and took Dexter into custody. Even if Dexter woke up before the police got there would be no use in trying to escape. Batista would have already shown them everything, and if Batista was dead when the police showed up, Dexter would be in an even worse position than he'd be if they just took him in. So getting out of the restraints wouldn't matter, trying to manipulate Batista wouldn't work, and killing him would only serve to incriminate Dexter beyond a shadow of doubt. Dexter would have to sit there and wait for the authorities, knowing that it was finally the end of the road. He would have finally broken the first rule of the code in an irreversible way. The police would still search the entire vault, find the files, and see Dexter in Red's file. He wouldn't be able to feign innocence ever again, and Harrison wouldn't even know he was in there, so no easy way out with the M99 shot this time. He would have to allow himself to be arrested and prosecuted. All of the evidence against him means he would definitely be found guilty, and if he got extradited to Florida as part of a reopened Bay Harbor Butcher investigation, which he would be, the odds of him avoiding the death penalty would be very slim. If Leon didn't kill Batista, and Batista didn't kill Dexter, Dexter would die in prison or on death row. Escaping prison would be a pretty difficult feat too, because considering the crimes he'd be credibly accused of, it's likely he would be under the highest level of surveillance and maximum security while incarcerated. And the options for Leon and Charlie pretty much stay the same. They could either stick around and explain why they were hanging out with serial killers, or they could cut and run for their lives to avoid further exposure and a lot of prison time. Batista would be in a bit of trouble for the whole impersonating a police officer thing, and probably some other investigation issues, but again, the means might justify the ends for the powers that be, excusing him from any real or long-term consequences. And to be honest, this would probably be the most just outcome for everyone involved. Everyone except Harrison, that is. Harrison would most likely find out about Dexter's arrest the same way everyone else did, by seeing it on the news. That is, unless the police call him to tell him what happened and ask him in for questioning. Either way, knowing that his dad was finally caught, painted into a corner with no way out, could cause him to snap. He and Dexter were just starting to get close again. He was finally starting to trust and rely on his dad again. And besides his new girlfriend of only a few weeks, Dexter was the only person Harrison had left in the world. The cruel reality that he was all alone yet again could have devastating effects on his psyche. With no one in the world to help guide his urges and seeing no reason to keep living by a code that couldn't even protect Dexter, Harrison might choose to just give in to his darkness. He has the urge to kill already inside of him. He has found justifications for killing in the past, like when he watched his dad kill Kurt Caldwell, or when he got over killing Ryan Foster shortly after he was no longer in the hot seat for it. But he's also seen his father kill for convenience and explained that away too. The world is a cruel place for Harrison Morgan. First, his mom is murdered in front of him, then his aunt is killed. Next, his father abandons him and his adoptive mother dies. Then he gets his father back only to be re-traumatized by him and then have him taken into custody and publicly shamed and hated. If Harrison found the will to keep on going at all, why would he feel any responsibility to live by the rules of a society that never made room for him? Sound familiar? Brian Moser, Harrison's biological uncle, was a madman who felt justified in his killing and doing whatever else he wanted because of the hardships he faced as a child. Just like his nephew, Brian witnessed his mother be murdered right in front of him. He had Dexter, his only remaining relative, ripped from his life, and he ended up living a hard life in the system without anyone to show him any real love or comfort. Harrison and Brian Ryan actually shared DNA. The need to kill plagues Harrison, just like it did Brian. Harrison could lose his way after such a huge shock to his system, seeing his dad carted off to death row. Next thing you know, he is killing people indiscriminately and evading capture like a pro as he gets better and better at it all. But there is another way that things could play out for Harrison. In a world where Prater doesn't kill Batista, there is a non-zero chance that Harrison lands in prison himself. Dexter really did Harrison a huge solid when he planted Ryan Foster's watch amongst Mia's trophies before turning her into the police. Given her known history of only targeting sexual predators and Ryan's history of being one, the watch found with her belongings was the nail in the coffin of the Ryan Foster investigation. But Claudette still had her doubts. Remember that Lady Vengeance's last intended victim was not a sexual predator at all. That shows that she is willing to deviate from her usual MO and may not have cared or even known that Ryan Foster was a predator. Claudette also noticed that the watch was the only trophy that didn't have Mia's fingerprints on it. Not only that, but Ryan wasn't killed or disposed of in the way that Lady Vengeance's other victims were. But having bigger fish to fry, she was willing to let the easiest explanation be the correct one in the Foster case. But with deeper knowledge of the Bay Harbor Butcher case, she would be able to connect how he disposed of his victims to the way that Ryan was found for herself. And after rescuing Batista and arresting Dexter, she would have also discovered that Dexter was in fact hanging out with Lady Vengeance in the days right before her death, meaning he would have had the opportunity to plant the watch, explaining the lack of her fingerprints and the difference in his manner of death compared to her other victims. Eventually, she would figure out that Harrison was guilty all along and Dexter tricked them all to keep his son out of jail. Once she had her case together, it would only be a matter of time before Harrison was on trial himself, and there's a good chance that he would be found guilty because of everything Detective Wallace was able to learn about him the night Ryan Foster was killed and the tracing of Dexter's movements the day before Mia was arrested. Once Dexter goes to prison, Harrison's days as a free man would be numbered. But in a less cruel world, there is one outcome for Harrison that isn't so bleak. If he didn't lose his mind and for some reason Claudette was blocked from or uninterested in reopening the Foster investigation, perhaps Harrison would turn it all around. Seeing his father dragged to hell in the media, and perhaps even quite literally after dying on death row, maybe Harrison wouldn't be so interested in killing anymore. All his father's lifestyle has ever brought him is pain and suffering, showing Harrison that maybe life as a vigilante killer isn't all it's cracked up to be. He would probably be too ashamed to live an average life, going to the Collins College for criminology and all that, but maybe he could slip into a simpler life. With Dexter dead or buried deep within the prison system, Harrison could give up on trying to balance his desire to kill with a normal life. He could get intensive therapy, focus on maintaining his relationship with Gigi in a more honest and full way, and leave his traumatic past behind him. Maybe for someone who was born in blood and never really had a chance at a safe life as long as Dexter around, this outcome would be the closest thing to justice the world had to offer. Scenario 3, Dexter kills Batista himself. Batista could also meet the same fate as poor Sergeant Logan of Iron Lake, locked in an enclosed space with a desperate serial killer who was determined to get back to his son and stay out of prison. If Batista didn't act fast enough or efficiently enough, Dexter could get the upper hand. He could get Angel at knife point or subdued in some other way. If Batista tried anything or tried to call for help, Dexter could act rashly and kill him. If he turned the tables of their struggle somehow, Batista could wind up dead without Dexter even necessarily wanting to kill him. But the ramifications would be awful if Dexter killed Batista. Dexter would still find Batista's phone because Quinn still would have called, setting off the ringtone. Once he had it, Dexter could go through almost all of the same steps he did when Leon did kill Batista. Calling Harrison, having him help with the escape, maybe even still getting in Charlie's head about her file, managing to take any information about him with him before he left to avoid getting caught. He might even still manage to get Leon on his table before the night was over. But Dexter wouldn't be able to tell Harrison that Leon killed Batista this time if he was honest with Harrison about killing him, or if Harrison figured it out on his own. Their relationship would fall apart all over again. First Logan, now Batista? Was it just going to be like this forever? His dad killing people, getting found out and investigated by police, and then killing anyone who tried to catch him? Batista may have been a pain in the ass for Harrison to deal with, but he didn't want him dead. If Dexter keeps killing innocent people, how could Harrison possibly live with it all? If Leon spared Batista, but Dexter didn't, Harrison would probably go back to hating his dad dad's guts. He may demand that Dexter turn himself in again and stop the entire fucked up cycle once and for all. But by now, they both know that Dexter would never do that. And Harrison probably doesn't want to try to kill his dad again, no matter how much he despises what he is. That means they'd probably just part ways again, probably for good this time. Harrison would let his father get away, but he would go on living his life as if he didn't exist. Much like losing Deb, Harrison excommunicating him would be so painful that Dexter would want to get away from it all. He'd most likely leave New York and start life somewhere fresh again. Harrison would be right to walk away if Dexter killed another innocent person, because the cycle would never end. Because if Batista died in New York, it was proven Leon didn't do it, and Dexter suddenly disappeared again, there would probably be a few people hot on his heels with a few questions for him, just like Batista, Maria LaGuerta, and Dokes did once upon a time. Did you think of any possible outcomes we missed? Which one do you think is most likely? Drop a comment with your thoughts. And if you liked this one, check out our video covering every deleted scene from Dexter. Don't make us ask what if you never slashed the like button, and as always, thanks for watching.